So I'm Bill DeRosa, own Talking Finger. I'm the principal, and we do social media marketing, everything from profile development, creation to implementation, content, integration with other marketing such as traditional. And what we're going to talk about today is basically content. So how to create, curate, and implement social media content. So content is king, and we're really firm on you need to create a social media marketing strategy, because without a strategy you can't set goals or any of the other things that you need to do, and marketing inherently needs some kind of strategy. So one of the things that we always talk about first about content is it needs to be engaging. You can read the list here yourself, but the idea is that you want to have a broad scope of content so that you can touch as many different people as possible. Not everybody has the same needs and everything else like that, so by mixing up the content well, it really helps a lot. And this one's the most important: ask questions. In social media, statements kill. When you just put something out there that's simply a statement, a lot of times people don't have any reason to respond to you or engage with you. So asking questions is a great way to actually spark conversation, because the conversations is inherently where all the viral aspect comes from. And what you really want to do is go through kind of a checklist. What you want to do with content is look at it from the point of view of the people that you're trying to reach. Is it helpful? Is it shareable? Would you share this content? If you saw this piece of content on Facebook or YouTube or a tweet that comes across, would you want to retweet it? Would you want to share it? So it's important to look at the content you put out there from the other perspective. And what I mean by a wide variety, you really need to wear a few different outfits when you're talking about content. Because if you're going to write the same content over and over, it becomes stodgy. You're not really connecting with people. So what we always say is, some of your content needs to be kind of casual, all right, where it's not so businessy. It might be a little behind the scenes at the office, things like that. Obviously, sometimes it needs to be very professional, especially if you're on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you want to be as professional as possible because that's the platform you're on. Whereas on Facebook, you can be a little more free-flowing and such. And every once in a while, you also need to be a little bit of a clown. You need to have some things like Fun Fridays or stuff like that that people can connect with. So you really need to switch the outfits that you're wearing when you're talking about social. So here's some of the different tools that you can use, because people always come to us and say, how do I generate content? It's so hard to come up with ideas. It's so hard to find things that I can share and such. So what we're going to go through is a few different tools. Google Alerts is awesome to use. Do you guys use Google Alerts at all or know about? Okay. Google Alerts is a great way to generate content, because by using Google Alerts, you can put in certain keywords about your industry or things like that. You put up there, and what Google will do is once a day, it'll send you an email finding all the different pieces of content that are out there that are labeled or keyworded for what you're looking for. So it'll give you links to websites, updated news, even images, things like that. So it's a really great tool to help start generating some content. Here's some of the other ones. These are called news aggregators. And they work similar to Google Alerts, except they're a little more in-depth. You can put a lot more information of what you're looking for, really much more defined. Because while Google Alerts you can define to a degree with just using keywords, with these you can go a little bit deeper into industries and everything else and really segregate the important content you want to see. So here's some examples. You can, these are also available if you Google news aggregators for social. A lot of these will come up. Stuff to Tweet is one of my favorite ones. That one is really awesome because it really, and don't get fooled by the name, it stayed Stuff to Tweet only because they started out being a news aggregator for Twitter stuff, but since then they have gone very broad scope, but because of branding, they didn't want to change their name. So that one, don't be fooled by, but it is. Smart Brief is awesome, especially for real professional stuff, or like content that you want to put on LinkedIn. Smart Brief is awesome. It really goes into things like white papers and blogs and things like that. So very professional. But any of these other ones work really, really awesome for that. Well, what you would do, say for like Stuff to Tweet, if you were a business, what you would do is go to Stuff to Tweet, put in some keywords. Just like if you were going to search for yourself on Google, what keywords would you put in there for people to find your business? So those type of keywords and phrases and things you would put into Stuff to Tweet. It'll say, what do you want to be shown? What do you want us to find? Start putting those keywords into Stuff to Tweet, and it records them. You set up a profile and everything else. All these, you set up a profile. And it will, every day, it'll send you information information or news articles or content that's out there that gets sent to you via email. So then you can use that content to share and such on yours. It also sparks ideas. Yeah, it's just the name. It's stufftatweet.com. Yeah, it's a news aggregator, and it basically finds content for you. Now, obviously, you can use that content. You can rewrite your feelings, and one of the things I always try and tell people is, even if you find a news article or something that's related to you, try and personalize how you're describing it. In other words, you find an article about your industry that maybe even you don't agree with. Well, you can still use it, because if you post it on your social networks and say, here are my thoughts and opinions about this article I found, and it also opens up conversation with your audience. So these are news aggregators as far as getting you information to use for content and then discuss it with people. Next thing to help generate content, retweets and shares. And you can read all that stuff yourself up there. But retweets and shares, it's other people's content. But by finding this content and then sharing it with your audience that might be related to what you're doing, not only are you producing content for yourself, but you're also building relationships, because anytime you share people's content on the social networks, you retweet something, you share it on Facebook, you find a YouTube video that you can then add to your favorites, those people get notified. And a lot of people are reciprocal in that respect. So if you help other people out by sharing their content and getting their content out, oftentimes they will come back to you and then share your content. So it helps share audiences, build audiences, and things like that. So do retweet things, do share things that you find out there in the social sphere. Look around you. A lot of times we're actually at a business. Now, some businesses are really easy to generate content. I said earlier, Sports Center is one of our clients, and Sound Tigers is one of our clients. Those are so easy to generate content for, because everything that goes on at these facilities, Sports Center alone has like 12 different activities, laser tag, mini golf, all these other things. Those are really easy to generate content. But what if you're a box company or a corrugated box company? It's hard to really understand that there still is a lot of content around you. You think about Days in the Office, and these are all just little snippets of things that clients that we've done with clients and such like that. Anniversaries, our company's a year old or 20 years old now, things like that that you could talk about. Employee spotlights. One of the things about social networking is, if you let people get to know who you are, people do business with people they know. So by doing things like employee spotlights or showing the people behind the business, people then can make a connection directly with that person and understand the culture of the company. New technology. It's funny, we have a client, Highfield Packaging. It's hard to generate content for that, but they got a whole new computer system. So for 2 weeks, they had this whole run of content that was actually really interesting of, well, geez, this thing isn't working right now. We need to call in the tech, and have the picture of the guy in the tech coming in with a suitcase and stuff. So silly things like that happen are great for content, because one of the things about social, again, is letting people get to know the company. It's the man behind the curtain. It's the whole Wizard of Oz thing, is letting people see what's behind the curtain and get involved in your company. They kind of make that personal connection with you because of what you're doing and what you're sharing on there. So here's some little ideas like that, and there's a ton more if you actually sit and think about what goes on in your business on a daily basis or a weekly basis that you can find content for. And like I said, people do business with people they know. And inherently, that's my favorite thing about social networking and social marketing, is that people really who normally wouldn't get to know the culture of a company because they're a big stodgy company or they're a very private company, this really lets them in behind everything. Another thing is professional content writers. There's 2 or 3 here today that walked by the booth that I actually work with. Tanya Detrick is one of the people, and there's a few other ones. But professional content writers are great, especially for long formatted things like blogs and such like that. They're really good at taking the basics that you give them and then writing it out long format. And they're usually, people get afraid of hiring a professional writer, but they're not that expensive to use or anything else like that. They typically have really good rates, but they produce really high quality stuff. Use them for blogging. You can even use them for Facebook posts and stuff. For Twitter, you usually don't need content writers because Twitter is very succinct. It's only 100. If you can't come up with 140 characters once in a while, and You got bigger issues than that. But they're great resources. Even if you only use them every once in a while or once a month to write something good for you, they're really valuable resources. We use them. We produce content, and I still use Tanya for some things and some of the other content writers we work with, just because that's their field, and they're very well, I give them the basics of what I want written, the outline of it, and then they come back and they give me the well-written format that I simply can't write as well as they do. So excellent resources. So best practices for your content strategy. For longevity and chance of full exposure, make posts about the same topic in a staggered fashion. And you can see the outline there. And what I mean by this is, I'm sure you've seen, if you're in social networking all that much and everything, that sometimes people do a major content dump of the same thing. They write a blog post, for example, and then what do? All of a sudden in that day, they've posted it on Facebook, they've tweeted it out, they've posted it on the Google+, all in one shot. Now, as a follower of somebody who's of this company, if I'm following you on a couple of different social networks and you're doing this major dump, you've just lit up my phone with notifications, and it's a little bit annoying that all of a sudden I'm getting the same piece across all these different things. The other thing to keep in mind is, content typically in these days, because people have so much information overload, it might only last like an hour or two when you put content out there. So if you think about it this way, if a piece of content lives for an hour or two out there and you throw it across 5 different social networks, for example, that content only lives an hour or two. However, if you stagger when you actually release that content, each time it's put out, it has its own lifespan of an hour to 2 hours. So now instead of this content living just for an hour or 2 hours, now because you're staggering it, each time it's out there. So you've extrapolated from that 1 to 2 hours now to like 10 hours of life. And that's really vitally important. And now you're not pissing off all the people who follow you either and everything, because they're getting the same thing. Another thing that's really important is be sure to speak the language of the social network that you're actually on. And again, I'm going to go back to when people dump content and they use auto programs like Hootsuite or Sprout Social, which I love. Auto programs are great because they save a lot of time. The problem is people do a lot of copy and paste, and they say the same thing on Twitter as they do on Facebook as they do on LinkedIn. And each audience is different. You get far more results if you speak the language of the social network. So even if I'm putting out this blog post, and it's the same blog post that I'm going to disseminate, when I write it on Twitter and I expose it, I'm going to be very succinct. It's going to be very quick about what the blog's about. Use a hashtag if I created one and make a link to it. On Facebook, I'm going to describe this blog post a little different because I can extrapolate a little bit. I can ask it an opinion because people can give me feedback in an easy format. I'm describing it differently. When I post that same blog on LinkedIn, I'm going to be more factual. I'm going to be more concise. I'm going to set it up more as a thought leadership type of outlook. So speaking the language of the networks that you're on and what people expect to see is very important. You just don't want to write the same thing for all of them. One of the important things about content is creating a calendar. A lot of times people have that, it's Tuesday, I haven't made a Facebook post in a week, I'm just going to go Google something really quick and throw it up there. And sometimes it works and sometimes it's really good, but a lot of times it's just kind of crap or minutiae you're putting up there just because you haven't made a post. So a calendar helps a lot with creating a strategy. And I'm going to give you a little insight of how we kind of develop our strategies here on our calendars. We always start off with, these is, and it might be a little hard, but immediate actions is a column that we always have. And immediate actions is the ongoing list of things that have to be done, such as branding. We have new branding, so we have to make sure all our social networks are branded the same. Because one of the things you don't want to have is, you have a Twitter account and that thumbnail there is different than the thumbnail on Facebook, or the cover photos are different, because branding is really important on social networks. Because if you think about it, no matter what social network you're on, they own like 80% of the playing field and you get this little space in the middle. So to stand out and to really have a good branded piece across all the social networks, you want to make sure. So immediate actions is kind of like things like that that have to be kept in mind. We also make a monthly calendar, and it goes out 3 months typically. And why you create a monthly calendar is it's your long-term things. A lot of businesses may be doing trade shows, or they may do events, like a lot of nonprofits do a lot of events and stuff. So by having that, on month 3 over here, we just label it month 1, 2, 3, but it could be July, August, September, whatever. But by having that event posted up there that it's 3 months out, you can always backtrack and know that you have to start promoting this event on the social networks a month and a half to 2 months before. So by organizing things even on a long-term fashion, it helps to understand that this piece of content or the promotion of these things has to happen a month or two before. So that's why we do the monthly calendar. Then of course we have a weekly calendar. This is like the day-to-day operations. And the way we do it is we have the different social networks that we're on here, and then it's Monday through Friday. And it's things like, we can do a YouTube Tuesday, or it's just to remind you that a blog is due on Wednesday. It doesn't necessarily have to have a topic, but we find that if people have some kind of calendar to reference, they don't go through those uh-oh moments of, oh my God, all of a sudden we got to have this. So if you're always looking at your calendar and looking ahead that a blog post is going to do, more than likely you'll probably make more of an effort to actually write that blog so it'll come out on the right day. And we always start off with certain parameters here. As far as what should be done on what days. Now, what I can't get into today because it's supposed to be a 10-minute tech talk or whatever, but analytics drives this. I'm very analytical with my social. So after a month, what you really should be doing is looking through all your analytics, trying to build some correlations, and see what days and what content's working or not. Because you might find that and we always tell people, experiment a little. This is not a race. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you have plenty of time to experiment. You might want to move this blog to Tuesday for a little while. You might want to move it to Thursday after that. And by collecting analytics and understanding how people receive your content and what they're doing with it, the analytics kind of give you a feedback of what day is the best day to post that blog, or what times. Is Saturday a good day? Should we experiment with Saturday a little bit depending on your audience? So setting up a calendar to start with and then reading analytics to redefine it becomes really important. And I did actually have the slide in here. Analytics. And the analytics, the cool thing about social networks is every single one of them has an analytics dashboard in the background. Facebook does. The only one who really doesn't is Twitter, but Twitter has some beta stuff that you can use. There's I forgot what the crowdsource is one of the ones. But there's different analytics programs for these things. But each social network has their own. They're there for a reason. It helps understand content. Analytics on social networks is really the measurement of content. That's what it comes down to, because what you're measuring is what you're doing with that content, how people are receiving it, and then what are they doing with that content once they get it. And that's what these analytics show. And if you're not reading analytics and you're going by gut, it's not the right way to do it, because it's really difficult to ascertain how successful it is and how far things have gone without actual numbers backing it up. And here it is, analytics to redefine content. Tells a story of what you post and everything else, and how your audience responds to your content. And that's really what you want to measure, because content, we started off with content is king. So understanding how that content gets out there and everything else is vitally important. Last slide. It also tells you where traffic came from. Now, this is a really watered down, simple example, just so people can understand what it works. But this is Pinterest, this is Facebook. I made a post on Pinterest. It's a little funny little tweet thing right here that we did. I posted it up, and that was the only one I made for a couple of days because I was specifically looking for analytics. What I did was, in the back end of this image, I changed the URL so that it would link directly to my Facebook page, because I wanted to understand how the traffic flowed. So when people clicked on this, they actually went to our Facebook page. And in the back end analytics, you could see 9 people came to our Facebook page from Pinterest. So if you think about this tiny little microcosm of an example of how you find out how people get from one point A to point B and what they're doing, it helps determine how much time you should spend on each social network. You might be on Pinterest, but are you really getting anything out of it? Is it really driving traffic anywhere? So this stuff really helps to understand where things move. And I think that's it, and that's it. All right, and if you need, this is actually, what I just did is available on our SlideShare. It's slideshare.com/talkingfinger. This and like 40 or 50 other ones that I have are up there. And also our YouTube channel, which is not listed up there, but you can go to our YouTube channel. We also have tons of videos on all this stuff as well. And of course, give me a call, reach out to me if you have any questions or anything. And that's it. That was my 20-minute tech talk, I think. No problem.